the second annual HUG event. Learn more right after this.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to Energy Star light bulbs, and you'll realize just how much cash you are really burning through. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg,
Doc,
how are you?
oh, I won't complain.
Well, that's good. That's different. No. I'm glad you're doing well.
I didn't say well.
That's too far. Is that too much? That's
Yes,
too much.
I won't complain.
Okay. We're talking about an event coming up that's connected to an organization that I guess is a couple of years old now.
Yeah.
One Community United, that was formed in an attempt to, I would say, maybe resolve potential racial conflict in the community. Our guests maybe can elaborate on that purpose a little more, but I know that they had an event not quite a year ago that was hugely attended, I thought, for an event like that.
It was. Yeah, I think it exceeded everyone's expectations of the turnout. And I think I'm looking forward to this year's event because there's a lot of work to do as far as race relations. And I think you got to have people willing to have uncomfortable and real conversations. And I think One Community United is trying to do that.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple of guests that will be joining us after this break. We'll talk about the upcoming event and also their mission and goals for this organization. So, an important show today. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been joined by Charles Love and Rex Sussman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I know we want to talk about the event and the guests that's coming as part of that, but let's talk a little bit about the organization first, so people have a better idea about what it is and what it's for and what you do. So, One Community United, what is that about?
Well, One Community United kind of evolved out of a crisis, as does most things that have good reactions. But a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 years ago now, we were having a whole list of racial issues dealing with law enforcement. Almost every day or every week, you were having some black person, having a confrontation with the police officer, with law enforcement, and ended up dead.
And you're talking nationally?
Nationally, yes. And so out of that, one of our founders, one of the specific things was Ferguson, Missouri. And Ferguson, Missouri is similar in size as Rome, Georgia. And demographically, it's similar. And so that person thought that, particularly Ken Fuller thought, well, you know, we need to be proactive. And let's create some dialogue in the community around race. And let's have some honest discussion and perhaps some uncomfortable discussions. Because most discussions on race have not been uncomfortable. They've been comfortable, and they haven't been stretched in terms of the discussions. How do you feel? How do you think about race? How do you really feel? What have you heard? What are your experiences? So this group came up, One Community United, to really discuss, have some serious discussions about race, particularly in Rome and Floyd County. And what can we do as a community to bridge the gap? It largely began around community organizations and individuals who came together and said, let's do this. And out of this has come small groups that have discussion, no particular issue, but just have discussion, getting to know someone who maybe not like you or doesn't look like you or doesn't worship like you, who doesn't believe the same things that you believe. But we all have something in common. And so that's how this organization got started. That's kind of our mission, to have discussions around the issue of race and talk about serious issues around race and come up with a resolution for them. So that's how we got started.
So I have several questions, but one question, I guess, is, especially since you both have talked about the importance of being uncomfortable. Why is that significant, and why does that help resolve anything?
Well, those things that you think that you may feel uncomfortable with, it's really not so uncomfortable when you talk to someone who's willing to listen and kind of give you feedback. In certain circumstances or in certain environments, if you discuss certain issues about race, you really don't get to the point, because you may say something as a white person to me that may offend me, or I may say something as a black person that may offend you. And we need to be open to say, can I ask you or can I talk to you about something that I really wanted to ask you or talk to you about? But people haven't gotten past that confrontation because they are afraid of being attacked either physically or verbally or both. Yeah. And so they hesitate to really talk about it. Yeah. And once you get past that, I think you will have we have found out that you have some really meaningful discussions, that we have a lot of stuff in common.
Yeah, well, Greg attacks me verbally all the time.
Yeah. But you accept it.
But you got, but you got to deal with those attacks. And I have to agree with you, Ms. Love, that I think reason why I feel we have to have uncomfortable conversations is because we clearly have a race problem in 2017, and we have to ask ourselves why. We've been talking about race a lot forever, but we seem to where have we moved the needle? And I think we haven't because we really don't talk about race. We talk, but we really don't talk, and we say things, and I just think it comes down to being open or having a relationship with someone that you can say honestly, hey, this is how I feel, or this is what I've always been led to believe, and I want your perspective, and getting that perspective. And it's very difficult. And when people talk about race, it's almost like religion or politics. As soon as you say race, people get defensive and they get, okay. So I think, so I applaud y'all for doing that. Because I do think if we ever going to move the needle, if we're going to identify the needle, where it's at, we got to be willing to have some real conversations about race and not worried so much about offending people. Because when me and you have conversations, because of our relationship, I know that my intent is not to offend you if I do. And we can say, well, I find that offensive or whatever, but that's not my intent. Well, when you don't know somebody.
But it took us a while.
You did. Yeah. We still working on it. We still working.
And I have friends that I've been knowing since college. And we know each other well enough that I could say something that an objective person would look at and say, man, that's insulting. Why would you talk to them like that? Mm-hmm. Well, because I know them. Yeah. And I can say things that to a person outside would think would be a harsh criticism or insult, they don't take it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that cliche word that I hear so often, we've come a long way, but we got a long way to go. That word needs to be, we've come a long way and we don't have so far to go. And it's because we don't have honest discussions.
Yeah.
We don't have those honest conversations. But if I get to know you, I can say things to you and to the other person may be insulting, but I can receive it with the fact that I know you don't mean it as an insult, but you mean it as an inquiry, wanting to know.
I got a question for you, Mr. Huxman.
Surely.
Do you think part of our race dialogue or lack of comes from a lack of really education? And I don't mean in the formal sense, but I mean when you look at any polls, you look at the statistics, people views about race can be so different. And I'm just wondering sometimes, how can you have people in the same community so far apart? Is it a matter of just educating? Or do we both sides lack the education that the other one has or something?
Greg, I think it's not education per se, but I think it's a different in experiences. If you're a black man, and well, let me just tell you this story. Our speaker for the Hug event is a man named Patrick Phillips, who moved from Sandy Springs in Atlanta with his parents up to Lake Lanier in Forsyth County at the age of 7, and grew up in Forsyth County. That was in 1977. Grew up in Forsyth County, going to school with all white kids in a racially segregated apartheid Forsyth County. And then he came to wonder what was this all about, and why do you all? Because he heard a lot of anti-black talk. I mean, the real thing that you can imagine. And he said, "Why do you all hate black people, even though you don't have any around?" And he heard these stories and these myths about what it was like back in 19. Well, they didn't even say what, a long time ago. There was this rape, and we ran all the black people out. And he just kind of came to accept that. And I remember, he was led later on to investigate that. But I went up to Forsyth County in the 70s when I first came to Atlanta, and I found it a very charming, pleasant, kind of a backwater town, which I enjoyed being there. Now, if Charles couldn't have that same experience. So his view and my view were going to be different. And one of the things about One Community United is that we could get together, and if I'm willing to listen to his story and he's willing to listen to my story, maybe we can kind of come to an understanding. But I think what we do is this is my story, and I'm sticking to it. And we kind of kept keeping our own communities.
You know, it's interesting. Because I agree, it is experience. But at some point, when we look at several years ago, when you would see a police shooting or something, and I would be amazed at the differences and how people saw those events. And I'm just thinking, what? Like, what am I seeing something, like, is it a trick being played on me? Am I seeing something totally different? And I know we see things through our own filters, but it's scary sometimes when we can look at the same event and have two totally different views about abuse, murder, and things of that nature. That's scary, and especially in this day and age, that when we may not always agree with everything that happened, but some things we should be able to come together and say, no, wait a minute, that's just wrong. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that time just really had me just thinking, really, where are we in terms of life and respect for life in this country, especially with regards to race? And so, I'm still mystified by it. Like, how do we fix this problem?
Well, we can't fix it before the break because it's coming up in about 10 seconds.
Already?
Yeah. But maybe we can fix it when we come back. So stay with us. A lot more after this. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for a new pet that your family will cherish every day, consider adopting from a shelter. Shelters are the best places to find a new pet. That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals, eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet, so bring home your new buddy today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Charles Love and Rex Hussman about One Community United, and also about a special event coming up in February on the 17th. Is that right?
Yes,
17th?
17th.
Friday night,
Friday night,
7 o'clock.
February 17th.
6 o'clock.
Is it 6 o'clock? And we have the author Patrick Phillips is coming. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Before we get to that, I just wondered what your impressions were on how One Community United is doing. I mean, we talked a little bit about the intent and what got it started. How do you feel like it's doing? I mean, is it achieving its goal? Where is the organization toward that mission?
I'd like Charles to speak a little bit about that, but I would just say that if we look at some short-term, not necessarily baby steps, but little steps along the way, I think we're on the right path, and I'm hopeful about the future. But I would not be naive enough to think that we're going to do anything, make anything really change. But we do have people who are, myself included, I have had some developed some relationships with Charles, with other black folks, and this is not just my experience. I think we're creating a flow of energy and positive energy back and forth, and so I think it's more like an oak tree growing slowly, and we'll probably measure it in terms of years, 3, 4, 5 years, and we'll be able to see some things moving along in a more definite way. But it's not a quick fix.
And I think that there has already been some what I would call residual or collateral experiences. I know that there are some other issues that are being discussed around race. I think the police department is engaged in some of those activities. They've had a couple of meetings with some citizen groups. I think that this past weekend, last weekend on MLK weekend, there was a panel discussion on race.
You were involved in that.
And
Yes, you
Mr.
were.
Stropser was on the panel.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I couldn't say, but I will take credit, that the organization will take credit for it, that you're having more dialogue around the issue of race.
Yeah.
And so that's some collateral things happening in response to this. But I think Rex is right, it's going to be a little while, but we see incremental steps and we see seeds being planted. So, and I'm optimistic also. We're beginning to gather information, to get data to support what we are talking about. And that data is pretty revealing. We have a collaboration with Berry College doing some research, and that is kind of exposing some things that we kind of were doing off the cuff, but it's confirming what we are really engaging in as a group. Yeah.
I know we haven't, it's been so recent we haven't even had a chance to talk much about it, but I got the sense that you felt that some of the things that came out of that panel discussion were positive, the fact that they were being discussed.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Anytime we're having true dialogue about race, I think it's progress. And progress doesn't have to be measured in terms of millions and thousands and hundreds. It can be measured in terms of 1 and 2. So I agree. I think the true progress will come with our children and our grandchildren. Because if we have better relationships across all lines, then naturally our children grow up with those relationships, and then our grandchildren. So I measure pretty much any true discussion on any topic successful if we're at least talking about it and making it bear. Because I've had some people come up to me after the panel, and you just be surprised sometimes, what people say and their beliefs, and people how I think we have people in our community and in our society who want to move the needle. And I think one thing HUG does it's giving people a platform, an opportunity to engage in that, because I think it's hard. If you're a white person, how do you engage black people? You know, how do you just don't go up to them and say, hey, you know? So I mean, so I think you got to have that, and I think HUG is doing it. Is giving people an opportunity to sit down and say, hey, man, this is not who I am, and I want to be better. Or I may harbor some of this, but how can we move forward? And I think so. I think the organization is successful already, like you say, in small steps, because you have created those dialogues and those relationships. So now it's just a matter of, you know, how do we keep growing that?
Well, let's talk about the event coming up. I know that last year, the HUG event, what does HUG stand for?
Hearts United Gathering.
Okay. Hearts United Gathering. Okay.
It's near Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
John,
right.
you're a poet too. You can make that stretch.
I remember having some thoughts about it last year, but I will tell you, I was just myself amazed at the crowd at that event last year. I mean, I know we had two pretty impressive speakers, but I was just amazed how many people came out for that.
I think we were too.
I was like,
we were happily surprised.
It was just like 400 or 500 people, or more than that even.
800.
800?
Yeah, it was
800.
Really?
800.
We had overflow in another church.
Now, see, that's just remarkable to me. I mean, it's and the speakers were great, but they were not, you know, famous. So something else was bringing people out here for that. So, I mean, that alone is interesting. But the HUG 2 event's coming up on the 17th of this month. So I think this year, obviously, the intent is to have that same impact. Mm-hmm. So our guest this year is Patrick Phillips, who's written a book, which we have here on the table, Blood at the Root.
A racial cleansing in America.
A racial cleansing in America. But it does focus on Forsyth County.
Yeah, well, let me just speak a little bit about why this is a significant book here for Floyd County and at this time. So Patrick grew up in Forsyth County, and he came there, and when he was 7, rode the school bus, and after a while he got up the nerve to ask some of his schoolmate buddies, well, how come y'all hate black folks so much, even though there's none around here? And then he says, his friend said, oh, Pat, you don't know nothing. And went on to tell about this legend and this story about how years ago they drove out all the black folks, and they never came back. And so this was in 1980, 77. In the 80s, there were no white citizens living in Forsyth County.
No blacks.
I mean, no black citizens. Right. Thank you. So Patrick, it turns out, did know something. He went ahead, went to some prestigious schools, got a doctorate, became a well-known poet, was a finalist for a National Book Award in 2015. But about 10 years ago, he was riding in a cab with Natasha Trethewey, who is from Mississippi, an African-American poet, and she challenged him and said, well, you know, I write about my experience with race, and you're from Forsyth County, which everybody knows is a all-white county. How come you never write about that? And he took that as a personal challenge, and he began to investigate all of those stories and myths and legends that he had heard about. And this is the story of Forsyth County going back to 1912, in which there was a rape of a young woman. And the results of that was that there was a lynching, and that there were some arrests of some these were black citizens who just happened to be easy targets, and there were some lynchings, legal lynchings, but within a month or so, all of the 1,098 black residents of Forsyth County were driven out. And in a few years, their property appropriated, and they just they lost everything. And this is the story of that. And what I think is really significant is that Patrick can talk about how this changed his view, because he came from parents who were active in the civil rights struggle back in the 50s and 60s, and he had an enlightened attitude, but he didn't quite get it. Sort of in the same way that I didn't quite get it going through Forsyth County in the 70s either. What was this? What was really going on here? So this is the story of and how what happened right over 2 counties over in 1912, and then also in the 80s, how Hosea Williams led a march and changed that whole thing. And we're looking forward to him coming and being able to talk about this historical fact, that this is an experience that was real, and then also perhaps how this has changed him, because the goal is for us to, I think especially in the white community, to be open to some change about what it's like, what racial life is like in this country for black Americans.
So that event will be on Friday, February 17th. What is the location?
It's at the Wilder Center at First United Methodist Church at downtown Rome. And the doors open at 5:30, and you can come in and get pizza right off the bat. And we'll start, the MLK choir is going to sing, and Patrick will be speaking thereafter. And
is there any charge for the event?
No charge for the event. We will be taking up donations and contributions to help support this.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm fascinated. I remember when Oprah did her show from Forsyth County during, part of this period. So I'm very eager to hear the speaker and to see how people apply what happened then to Rome and Floyd County today. Yeah.
We could also add that Patrick will be giving a reading at Berry College at 4 o'clock, and then the next morning we're going to be having a kind of like after the event, a discussion and question and answer period with Patrick and anybody who wants to come to. We'll be doing that at Lovejoy Baptist Church at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Well, great. Well, we're coming up shortly on another break. We'll give you some of those particular details again when we come back. Do not go away. We'll be right back after this.
My college offers classes that meet my educational and career goals,
with opportunities outside the classroom,
where the faculty know me by name.
My college can prepare me for my career.
I can earn an associate's degree and transfer credits toward my bachelor's.
My college is a state college within the university system of Georgia.
My college is affordable.
It's close to home.
My college has online opportunities.
It's where excellence begins.
We are
GHC, Georgia Highlands College.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been talking with Charles Love and Rex Hussman about One Community United and that organization's big event coming up on the 17th of February, the Hug 2 event, Hearts United Gathering, is that right?
Yes.
And the guest will be author Patrick Phillips, who's written a book called Blood at the Root, A Racial Cleansing in America. You need to be there. There is no charge. The Wilder Center, the First Methodist Church downtown, same location as last year. And Friday, February 17th at 6. You can come in a little early.
5:30.
Okay. But that's something you want to be there for. This is something important that a significant group of folks is doing in our community. Need to support it. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on Community Watch.